Peace, chosen ones. Happy Owl Wisdom Wednesday. I hope you all are doing well. This is the Mystic Owl speaking, and today I want to talk about integration back into society after having a profound spiritual awakening or even multiple spiritual awakenings, especially the part where obviously we still live in the same world with the same people, but we are not experiencing the same things at the same time on any given day. I want to get into a personal story about myself. So, my spiritual awakening happened in layers, and I had a lot of smaller awakenings prior to 2017, 2018. Little moments where I could feel something deeper calling me. I've always had spiritual gifts. I've always had an active intuition. I've always been sensitive, empathetic, clairaudient, all of the spiritual things. But I didn't want those spiritual gifts because it was so heavy and it was so draining. And my first spiritual teacher, which was my maternal grandmother, passed away when I was 12. So I did not get to complete my spiritual initiation with her, even though she taught me a lot of things from 0 to 12. But right before the teenage years started to happen, is really when you need a mentor the most. And I mean, at 12, 13, I still had my parents, of course, especially my mother, my grandmother's daughter. But it's nothing like your grandmother, especially when she's spiritual. So, a lot, when I say a lot, I mean like at least 80% of the spiritual things that I know today, I had to learn on my own or figure out on my own, which is never easy. So, I pushed a lot of those spiritual awakenings away, mainly because I didn't have a mentor, I didn't have a teacher, and it's hard to teach yourself anything. So when my mother passed in 2017, I'm like, okay, there's something that I need to do. I just don't know what it is. And by 2018, I asked for my spiritual gifts back because I was going back and forth with accepting my spiritual gifts and denouncing them at the same time. And we literally get what we ask for in this place. So I was having a lot of back and forth, like one foot in, one foot out. And when you live like that, like there's not going to be any stabilization, there isn't going to be any clarity. There's going to be chaos and confusion when you're undecided because the universe, the Most High, your ancestors are not certain on what you actually want because you're not certain on what you actually want. So I experienced a lot of that for years. But by 2019, I made a decision. I want all my spiritual gifts back. I asked to see again. I asked for high discernment. I asked for the truth, even if it hurt my feelings. I asked for wisdom, even if it was uncomfortable. And that's exactly what happened. That's exactly why I'm the Mystic Owl today. Now, all the way back in the 90s, my maternal grandmother had already deemed that I was the owl because of our tribe, but I didn't want to be any of that. I didn't want to be any of that. I wasn't even sure that I wanted to be in this place because this place is not what we really think it is. Over the last decade or so, I've heard a lot, I've seen a lot, and it seems like people, especially those who identify as spiritual or they're getting into spirituality, they make it seem like awakening is like this beautiful, glowing, peaceful process. And yes, there are peaceful moments, moments of clarity, connection, and deep understanding, but it's not easy to go through a spiritual awakening. This is why a lot of people don't do it. It can get dark, it can get scary, it can get lonely, it can be confusing, especially when you're noticing things you didn't notice before while attempting to fit into the world, the same world, but you're not the same person. The conversations are different. They feel empty, they feel draining. Environments too, people too. You start seeing the truth about everything, the truth about yourself, the truth about other people, and that's not always easy to look at or to digest. My spiritual awakening prompted a lot of isolation. When I say a lot of isolation, I mean deep, heavy isolation, which I've always kind of been like that. I've always been quiet, more reserved and introverted, out the way. But in 2019, I really leaned into that energy of being in isolation. Being around people or even speaking to people, talking to people, like, yeah, we're speaking the same language, we're speaking English, but we are not speaking the same energetic code. We're not speaking the same spiritual awareness. And if you're like me, you deeply, deeply feel those things. And it's hard to front or to fake anything once you fully accept your spiritual awakening. When you're going through a spiritual awakening, society doesn't impress you the way it used to, if it ever really did impress you at all. But even the things that did once excite me, it started to feel exhausting. I mean, to the point where, like, I'd rather just literally go to sleep. Not that I'm just isolating myself from people, because I was, but I would prefer to go to sleep than to go to the movies or to hang out or go out to dinner or whatever. It was just all too much for me. And it was a very strange transition, and it still is, because I'm still figuring out and finding my own personal integration back into society, which society is totally different from my last spiritual awakening, which was in 2019, and it's 2026, and society is totally different. Like, we are in this same place. We're in this place together, but we are not on the same paths. We don't have the same stories. And people who aren't really spiritually aware, they seem to not understand this. Like, they seem to think everybody is one way or should be one way, and to have the same ideologies and to eat the same food and to walk the I never lived my life like that. Even prior to activating my spiritual gifts again for like the 10th time, I always understood that we are individuals here. It doesn't matter how big or small the family is that you come from or any of that. Like, we are all individuals here. And integrating myself back into society, I started to see that people still don't understand or refuse to acknowledge that we are still individuals here. Like, we've always been individuals here. But society has this thing with control that I'm not even going to get into today. They have this thing with control and controlling others, especially those who seem like they can be controlled. I know the type of energy that I give off. You know, when you're calm or soft spoken, introverted, it gives off an energy that people can control you, because they usually don't have control over themselves or their lives, and they see people like us, the chosen ones, and that's who they think they can control. But they're in for a rude awakening, because I look and sound very controllable, and that's not the case at all. So I was going through a spiritual awakening, and the people around me were going through a rude awakening. That's the best way that I can put it. And I got the "you've changed, you're not fun anymore. Why are you so serious now?" I actually had someone say that to me just a few days ago. And it's not about being serious, it's about being aware, it's about being conscious. Like, we don't really know what this place is or who these people are, technically speaking. And after an awakening, your tolerance for people, places, and things, anything that feels forced or misaligned, fake, your tolerance gets extremely low. Your spirit doesn't have the energy or even the capacity for it anymore. And the hardest part about all of that is that we still live here. Like, we still have to live here. We still have to be here, even with the ability to see beyond the veil. And for me, it's been about 8 or 9 years of that. 8 years of slowly figuring out how to live in this world without losing myself again, without the pretending, without the people pleasing, without forcing myself back into society's version of me or family or friends' version of me. And I no longer fit there. And I'm still not impressed with society. And I probably will never be. But I have learned to move through it in a way that protects my peace, my mind, my heart. I don't force conversations, I don't force situations. However it ends is the way it ends. Whatever happens is exactly whatever happens. I used to be one of those people who looked for clarity and looked for closure and looked for reasons why and wondering. And I would reach out to people who really didn't even like me in the first place just to see, just to get an ounce of clarity. But the thing about it is, now that I'm the mystic owl, I understand these people couldn't give me clarity because there was no clarity to give. There was never any clarity in the situation in the first place. And that's another thing. You don't need closure. You don't need clarity. You really just need to trust yourself. I've always pretty much lived a quiet life, slower, more intentional, and that could be boring for a lot of people, but for those of us who thrive on seeking peace or having peace, it just feels more honest. It feels more correct. And if you're in this phase where you feel disconnected after your awakening, because more than likely we're all going to experience multiple spiritual awakenings, these are some of the steps that help me navigate and somewhat integrate back into society. And the first thing that I had to realize was I had to stop going back and forth between who I was back then and who I am today. Because, like I mentioned earlier, if you are giving mixed signals and you're confused, the answers and the results that you're going to get back, that feedback is also going to be mixed signals and confusion. You have to get clear on who you are today and where you are today. That version of you served a purpose. You've outgrown it now, and that's okay. Another thing that helped me was to simplify my environment. I didn't spend as much. I really slowed up on my consumerism. I really sat down and took a look at what my needs versus wants were. And that really helped ground me because a spiritual awakening, at least my spiritual awakening, they can get chaotic sometimes. And the more stuff and the more clutter you have, the harder it's going to be to ground yourself. And that leads me into the third thing that helped me was creating grounding rituals. Like I started journaling. I would be so frustrated and I would start journaling just about my day, the things that frustrated me, even the things that went well, but especially the things that upset me that day or a person, a situation, whatever it was. And by the time I was done writing, it was like a big weight was lifted off of my shoulders. So journaling definitely helped. I know it could be kind of hard to get into journaling, but it was a little bit easier for me to get back into it because I had been journaling since elementary school and then pretty much stopped in high school. So to get back into journaling for me, it was very freeing. But if you're just starting out on your journaling experience, it probably will be a little too much to journal every day. So maybe a couple times a week to start off just to see how you feel about it. Definitely incorporating more tea into my mornings and evenings, getting into meditations and prayers and affirmations. These things help me to realize, okay, I'm going through this spiritual awakening. I understand that I'm a spiritual being here in a human body, living in this 3D physical world. And those things help me to ground myself. They help me to understand and to try to find some sense of normalcy Because I don't want to say that a spiritual awakening is not normal. If anything, it's this place, this system, and the way it runs that's not normal. And when you are separating yourself from a system, but you also live in that same system, it's important, and this is the fourth thing, to redefine what success means for you. Because now that you've had your spiritual awakening or you're actively going through it, you're not following anybody else's path but your own. And that's when you realize that whatever success means to them and for them does not necessarily have to be what success means for you in your life, in your situation. So we have to redefine what success is for us, because we're not living for society anymore after a spiritual awakening. We're just here. We're just living in the matrix. We're not actually participating in it. And the last thing that I would suggest is finding one or two people who understand your spiritual path. And honestly, it's probably only going to be one or two people. Sometimes it's no one at all until years later. That's how it was for me. I didn't connect with people who even understood what I was talking about until 4 or 5 years into my journey. But even if it's just social media content, even if it's just this content, that's enough to have at least one person or some type of content that could even remotely understand what you're going through. Because in my opinion, a spiritual awakening should be normal, but unfortunately it's not. Being asleep and unaware and moving through life in an unconscious manner is actually what people are used to. That's what's normal for majority of society. And all of this takes time. Like, everything I'm explaining is about almost a decade worth of information just kind of condensed down, but it takes time, like real years. So if you feel like you don't quite fit into society anymore, you're not broken, you're not strange, you're not weird, you're just more aware than what you used to be and more aware than most of society. And in being aware, that's the beginning of being wiser, more intentional about your life and your journey and your path. And that's the path of the mystic owl: quiet, observant, intentional. I'm not here to follow the noise, never have been, even prior to my spiritual awakening, but I'm here to see through it. I'm here to make my life more easier than what it's been. And the only way and the only reason my life started to get easier was when I found out the truth, was when I came out of that depressive state of not knowing what's going on and being confused and being lied to. Because there's a saying that truth is stranger than fiction, and that's true. Because the things that I found out during my spiritual awakening in the beginning, I'll have to make another video about that. I just would have never thought that certain people who I thought were actually for me were really against me in the spirit. If you stayed to the end, thank you so much for listening. Be sure to tune into next week's Wisdom Wednesday for more spiritual guidance and insight. And as always, speak life over yourself, take care of yourself, love yourself, trust yourself, and protect yourself. I love you, chosen ones. Peace.